Breasts and blood. Hi guys, welcome to a video, and in today's video I'm just going to be reviewing a lesbian horror classic, The Vampire Lovers. As part of my lesbian vampire film review series, which is not really a thing, but it could be if both of us want it badly enough. Okay, so The Vampire Lovers is adapted from the 1872 novella Carmilla, and it's about a female vampire who goes around seducing and killing young women in 18th century Styria before she is hunted down by a group of dedicated men who have caught on to her evil doings. The Vampire Lovers is also the first film in the Hammer-Karnstein trilogy, with the other two films being Lust for a Vampire and Twins of Evil. So this was my first time watching this film, and before watching it, I had no idea that this film was adapted from the Carmilla novel. And as most of you know, I'm a huge Carmilla fan, mostly of the web series, it's true. But I also love the book, and I'm a bit of a nerd about the book and the web series. So I was very excited to watch another adaptation of the 1872 novella, and yeah, it was interesting, but let's get into it. Look, this film is an old school classic, it's a Hammer horror, and it for sure has its charms. It does. One of the things that I loved the most about this film was its aesthetics. I adored the mise-en-scene. I found both the set design and the locations in this film interesting, beautiful, and somewhat of a novelty in places as well. I also loved just how realistic the vampire teeth look in this film, because I've seen a few other productions where vampire teeth are questionable, so I was pleasantly surprised by how realistic the teeth looked in this film. Of course, for a film that's supposed to be set in the 18th century, the hairstyles and makeup didn't really reflect that, but hey, it was the 70s. Was the hair and makeup department even sober? Probably not. The funniest thing by far to me in this film is that Carmilla seduces Mademoiselle Peridot, who I assume is based on Madame Peridot from the novel. And as a fan of the novel, this is just so silly to me. They're not really two characters who I would have ever envisioned together, but hey, it's fun. And really, fun is what this film is. I mean, I definitely enjoy this film on a surface level. And I also think from a historical perspective, the fashion, the sets, the way women are portrayed, the erotic horror elements of it are all really interesting. The Vampire Lovers was also a landmark for Hammer Films, as it was the first of their horror films to contain nudity. But moving on to the lesbianism in this film. Look, as a lesbian, I wanted to love this film because a seductive lesbian vampire is relevant to my interests, and you can't argue with breasts. That's always a win. But with my critical gay eye, the lesbianism in this film is approached very gingerly and relies more on suggestion than anything else. When you compare this to the film's approach towards heterosexuality, there's a stark difference, even just in the kissing. But upon doing some mild research into this film, Ingrid Pitt has claimed that she didn't play the role as though Carmilla was a lesbian, but rather as an asexual, which explains a lot. And you also have to consider the time in which this film was made. Lesbianism was not seen in the same light that it is today, which would have definitely impacted this film. I also think despite all of this, Ingrid Pitt actually did a good job of at least portraying lesbian lust through eye contact. Her eye contact carried the film. I'm not even sure there's even a point in me looking at this kind of a film with a critical eye, because essentially it's a camp horror which offers its audience women who are hypersexualized, tick the patriarchal standards of beauty boxes, and engage in suggestive lesbianism for cheap thrills. And I appreciate it for what it is. I'm not the target audience. However, whilst I wouldn't label this film as progressive for women, one thing I did notice was that the most misogynistic male characters in this film were the ones who ended up being murdered by Carmilla. Now, this could be a coincidence since it is a horror film, but I found myself wondering if it was was a deliberate choice. I interpreted both Renton and the Doctor to have a slight misogynistic air about them. We're shown Renton groping the barmaid. I believe he's the only male character who acts like this in the film. And then we have the Doctor, who initially dismisses Renton's suspicions about vampires and then immediately sides with him against Peridot as soon as he sees that she doesn't like the garlic flowers he's holding. And as I say, this may just be a coincidence since both of these men also stand in the way of Carmilla's plans, but I found it an interesting one. Now, what I do feel is worth having a conversation about is the fact that The Vampire Lovers is an adaptation of the Carmilla novel, yet it completely lacks the heart and the romance that sits at the core of the book. I suspect they used the novel as a baseline and as a title since it was already established, but had no interest in really capturing the essence of the book. This is somewhat backed up by a quote from the director, who said that after reading the novella Carmilla twice, he didn't get a sense of any lesbian content, which seems to me to be incredibly dense. But I guess when you have a very heteronormative view of the world, it's easy to ignore and dismiss lesbianism, even if it's very obvious. Lesbian erasure is a real thing for a reason. And yes, I know it's an adaptation, so there's room for artistic differences, but really the only thing this film has in common with the book is the bare bones. The core themes and message of the book are completely absent from the film. The Vampire Lovers very much quote-unquote heterifies and cheapens the story that Le Fanu was trying to tell. Lastly, I'm not really sure how necessary the man in black was as a character. It just felt like he didn't really serve a purpose a lot of the time. It's like he was just there, and I'm not sure what the reason for him being there was. Yeah. Overall, as a piece of entertainment, I think this film is fine. It's novelty, and in terms of cinematic history and the horror genre, the film's incredibly interesting. As an adaptation of the Carmilla novel, it's probably one of the worst adaptations I've ever seen, and I think I've seen all of them at this point in time. But look, it's a camp horror film, and what you see on the packaging is what you get, so it's all good. Okay guys, if you've seen The Vampire Lovers, let me know what you think of it down in the comments section below. If you're a lesbian, if you're a lady of the night, come and join the Sapphic Underground Club. Just come and join it. It is a safe space for lesbian vampires. Yeah. Or just generally morally questionable women. Yeah. Don't forget to subscribe for instant disappointment, and see you guys soon. Bye.